Toronto smashing all records again. Year-end review of what the heck happened in 2021. Stay tuned. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. So glad you could join me here today. I'm going to give you my annual review of what the heck happened in the Toronto real estate market in 2021 as the numbers for December are finally released. I think they were released sometime last week, right? So first things first, everyone comes for this, the price. Let's get it out of the way. Prices started the year at January 1st, 2021, right, at $967,000 on average all across GTA, including condos, towns, freeholds, etc., all that stuff. And right now we're at $1.157 million. That's like a 20% increase in less than a year. That is absolutely crazy unhealthy. Now, the GTA averages about 4%, like 4.2 if you want to be exact, over the last 42 years as an FYI. So we're like 5 times the average right now, which is why everything is messed up. The even more messed up thing is that anything that's a freehold and property, like a freehold type of property in the 905, meaning outside Toronto, saw at least a 22% increase last year, and with some areas such as Bancroft going over 50%, meaning like 100,000 became 150 or 500 became 750. It's absolutely bonkers. That means if prices were to even correct themselves right now by 20%, which is the definition of a crash, it would bring us back to the prices last year, January 1st, 2021. And that would make all the people who bought then still in the black. Crazy, just absolutely crazy. Think about that. So how did we get here? Well, here are the numbers over here for the year, and you can see that we got here because we saw the least amount of listings for sale in the last 15 years ever in 2021, while breaking the sales record ever. So let that sink in for a sec. We broke the number of sales, right, while having 15-year low of listings. This means that there was less stuff to buy, but we bought more stuff, which seemed to be the trend in 2021, right? Supply shortage everywhere. Now, our sales to new listing ratio, or essentially absorption rate of all the new listings, was almost at 90%. 90%, which is freaky high, with December being, ending at like 122%. Now that may freak you out, but it's just leftover inventory that got bought up, meaning that there was no new listings, but stuff still kept getting bought. Now, I feel like this was the topic of all of 2021, like I was saying earlier, supply shortage all across the board, and real estate was not impervious to that. Now, all of this is not transitory. And as a point to add to that, it's very rare at the end of each month we see less than 10,000 listings, and you'll see over here, with the exception of January and December in each year, because no one really sells at that time. But in 2021, last year, in addition to December and January getting less than 10,000 listings, like at the end of the month, we saw February, July, August, September, October, November, all with less than 10,000 listings at the end of the month. It's insane that the last 6 months of the year, we saw so little new listings come on the market. Now, if you look at the chart over here, that compares the amount of sales per year at each month and how it progresses. You see that blue line at the top? That's an outlier. That's the line for 2021 without putting in the transaction in December. This is how much of an outlier 2021 was. It was absolutely crazy from a sales perspective, right? And on top of that, we obviously broke all price records as well, because nothing to buy, a lot of people are still buying, prices will go up, supply, demand. We've talked about this many times. So here's my summarized thought process on like data points, anecdotal evidence, and just reviewing everything all together about how the heck we got here. This is what I think. Everyone thought the market was going to crash at some point after the craziness of March and April, which you probably forgot because it was crazy in March and April, and then they decided to sell, and because they thought it was the top of the market, which happens all the time, right? It was frothy, bubble-like, right? But then most people saw how resilient the Toronto real estate market was, like all of GTA, and not listening to silly things such as, interest rate hikes, which we saw none of in 2021, called it. Bank of Canada's forward guidance, all this crashable bubble, crash. That's right, the usual stuff in the media headlines. And most people just saw how much prices appreciate from January to June. So in the first 6 months, prices went up 16%. or 4 times the average, and their year wouldn't even end yet. So when they were moving, whether they were moving out of province, getting like a bigger home because they wanted more space because of the pandemic, right? They opted to keep the existing house since it was a great investment just looking at the first 6 months of the year. And you could easily do this when prices have gone up so much, right? Prices went to 16%, mortgage rates coming down, and it was like rock bottom in the summertime at like 1.15%, some of the mortgages we were getting, right? It was absolutely insane. And then we did this in the summertime, right? After 6 months, the rental market and freeholds went boom, went up, right? So now that was like a perfect triple tsunami of making your debt service ratios work, right? So when you have a new house you bought, you keep the old house, you rent it out, the new house rent covers the cost of the old house rent after you refinance it, right? So that's what we've been doing a lot of last year for clients, and it was really easy to make those numbers work. So ultimately, this is why there were a lot fewer houses to buy, because people just weren't selling when they were moving to buy another house. Plus, it was so hard to buy a house that you wanted to live in before even selling it, because so many people were trying to buy a house, right? So if you were able to keep the house, you would just find something, live in it, rent it out, and still be afford the next one. Why wouldn't you, right? It just made total sense. We just kept guiding our clients down that path because it was so easy to make the debt service ratios work. Now, this over here is a chart from Terranet that got a lot of media headline saying that investors is very, very high at like 25%. And anyone who opted to keep their existing property is now deemed an investor. And I'm pretty sure Target's on their back now, right? Unfortunately, that's what's gonna come. We just gotta have someone to blame. Anyways, if this is the type of real estate content you enjoyed, then make sure you help us spread the knowledge by smashing that like button and subscribing to the Prime Propso channel. Every week, I talk about real estate topic and content that matters to you, because all this real talk is that we want to be transparent and honest. And by doing so, when you're thinking about buying your first home, upgrading your house, selling your home, or looking for your first investment, we have all the connections and all the people that can help you with your move. And you'll be like, you know what? Zen, he's got the guys, he knows what he's talking about. I'm gonna give him a ring, and you can book a call with me using this link right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Now back to what I was saying. When you have so few houses to buy, right, and so much demand, we've talked about this a lot, and even said it earlier, obviously prices go up. But what we gotta look out for as a metric of how crazy things were is the months of inventory. And the months of inventory in all of 2021 was super, super low. Look at the chart over here. Essentially, almost everything was below 1 month of inventory. Like literally almost everything. The only things that were like over 1 was like a little smidgen over, like literally a smidgen, not even made it to 1.1 months of inventory in all of GTA. All of that means that if it was sub 1.1, that means at no point in the year did we have more than 33 days worth of houses to buy. That means if 33 days, no houses came up, absolutely nothing to buy, which is why it was crazy. And we're still seeing this right now at the start of January 2022. Now, I kept praying for more supply relief each month and just kept absolutely getting disappointed and demolished in that kind of like little prayer. It was ridiculous. And we're now here in the winter season, which is where, like I was saying earlier, we're not going to see much inventory, and this Omicron stuff is not helping at all. And the demand is still very high. I was joking all last year when the new year rolls around, people always like, new year, new diet, new year, new me. But a lot of people are new year, new house, new year, new investment. And the demand comes roaring back. So the minute I came back from my vacation, it was just like phone calls, strategy calls, lined up one after another. And it was crazy. And at the end of those calls, people were like, you know what, I need to look for something to buy. I'm like, there's 1 or 2 houses in that area that you're looking for. Absolutely insane. There's just like literally nothing to buy right now. If you were part of my newsletter, again, link if you want to subscribe there, you can see that there was like 3,400 listings available in all of GTA. 34. We're supposed to have like at least 10,000. Crazy. So I saw this happen in 2016, 2019, 2020, and now we are in 2022. We're probably going to see a massive spike in price in February on a month-to-month basis. And I'm already seeing some crazy properties sell in areas and territories that have never seen that before. Like Ajax Town's going for $1 million. Waterloo Detaches for 1.2. Brampton Semis for 1.5. All of these are new pricing territory for that sub-market, right? And I've talked about this before. You have to be prepared, Absolutely, if you're trying to buy something. Now, another what the heck milestone we hit was essentially every single freehold property except for townhomes in the GTA. This includes like cities like Burlington, Oakville, Brampton, Saga, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham, Newmarket, Aurora, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa. I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, right, Toronto, right? My bad, right? All of these areas. And you get my point here. I'm just saying like all of GTA, every single freehold home is over $1 million right now. That means if you want a home that's not a condo, it's over $1 million. This is your semis and your detached. And I'm gonna loop towns in there that are all over $1 million right now because at the end of the year, the 416 and 905 towns were 995,000 and 997,000 respectively. So not quite a million, but basically there. So this idea of owning a non-condo home, you're looking at $1 million to start on average, right? That's crazy. This means that any dream of home ownership that's not a condo, you're gonna need to make a lot of money to make that work. So if we work back that cost of $1 million on average, right, from an affordability standpoint, and remember I talked about pricing doesn't match affordability because of many macroeconomic reasons, but let's just say your average Torontoan who wants to live in a non-condo needs to make essentially $200,000 in family income to qualify for this mortgage. That means you have two people, say they're together, 100 grand each, no problem, or 200 grand is a really top earner in Toronto. And this is assuming you can get the mortgage and you have the down payment ready, right? Now, when you loop in land transfer tax, that means you need about like 200,000-ish, 230, maybe depending on where you're buying it, to make that purchase. Absolutely insane. This is why so many boomer parents are gifting down payments and helping kids buy homes because it's that difficult right now. Absolutely crazy. And if you have been following me for a while, you'll know that I've been talking about the biggest land grab ever, right? And right now in freehold homes, that's a piece of land. Obviously I have a house on top, but it's a component of land. And we just saw that prediction get accelerated like crazy, right? To put that into perspective for you, the least expensive freehold home in the GTA was the 905 suburban town, right? You know, these are your 2-story, maybe 1-car garage, and then has like 3 bedrooms, like 3 bathrooms kind of type, right? It started 2021 at 800,000 on average, right? And now it's $997,000, or let's call it $1 million. The scary thing is I don't think we're slowing down anytime soon, right? And I said this biggest land grab ever like 3 years ago, and I was predicting that when we hit $1.25 million, home ownership unfortunately just going to be reserved for like the upper middle class or like the top earners in Toronto. And as of right now, the top earners are doing about $250,000, which is like 3 to 4x what the average Torontonian makes with a professional income. So it's absolutely insane. And this price isn't coming down. And we're just getting so close to the $1.25 million on average, like we're off just by $100,000. And I said that we would get there in like 5 to 10 years. It's 3. I mean, we're getting really, really close. And obviously the pandemic has accelerated like my prediction and everything a lot. But to put this into perspective, I said this 3 years ago that it would happen in 5 to 10 years. It's been 3 years. We're like 30% through my prediction of timeline and we're already there. Now, obviously, a lot of this is driven by the fact that interest rates at the lowest they've ever been. And that is a side effect, okay, why people piling money into real estate, because real interest rates are negative. What I mean by that is the cost to borrow. So from a real estate perspective, it's the cheapest way to borrow money using a mortgage is less than the rate of inflation, whether you use core, CPI, whatever, right? It's like 4.8 right now. So a lot more people are gonna borrow money at a cheaper rate when inflation is this high to get ahead, because that's just kind of the way that economy is set up right now. If you wanna get ahead, you have to borrow and lever up to get ahead. That's just a simple math I've been telling everyone. And this is why if you're paying down a mortgage quickly, whether it's double payments, accelerated payments, 25-year amortizations instead of 30, you're still living in like a thought process, like a paradigm of the past. It was only good advice, specifically it was passed down from like say our parents, when interest rates were over 8%. We're at like 1.2, 1.5 right now, depending on where you go. And if inflation is like 4 to 5%, and let's be real, it's much higher than that if you just look at the gas, eggs prices, right? And you're paying off your mortgage that's costing you, say, 1.5%, you're negative 3 to 4% already right off the bat, because you're earning what in a return on what your mortgage rate is, meaning you're losing money by paying down your mortgage so quickly. So when the smart money understands that, and by paying down the mortgage, you're effectively getting a crappier return than if you were to put it into real estate or stocks or something that is going to outperform inflation, right? Because the inflation rate is so much greater than the mortgage rate right now. So you have to understand that. And when you understand that, and I really think a lot of people are starting to grasp this concept, and I say this because like even my parents, like Asian parents, are trying to grasp this concept. The sentiment all over the place is now, that's why everyone is borrowing money to buy real estate, right? That's why there's so much demand. It's just driving up because the cost of borrowing is so low. When you've made so much equity by owning a house in the last few years, you just borrow from it and then you can buy another investment property. It accelerates kind of where you're gonna be in the future because borrowing gets you ahead because you beat inflation. It just makes sense. It's smart money. Now, we can't always keep finding people whether investors, foreign buyers, to blame, right? And that's what I think the media is doing a lot of. But ultimately, I think it's a systemic problem with our way our economy is right now, with the government's compressing down the interest rates being so low. We clearly have overstimulated the pandemic, right? We had that K-shaped recovery, those who got positively impacted by cheap money and those who got negatively impacted by cheap money. And while some will be definitely afraid of debt, because we were taught that debt is bad, and you can rarely teach an old dog new tricks. But those who understand that when the interest rates are so low and they keep stimulating the way they are right now, and with Omicron providing a cover to not increase interest rates, it's smart to leverage up, especially if you're going to be cash flow positive. You're losing other people's money to get ahead. And when you understand that, that's why there's so much demand in real estate. Like to this date, even my friends who aren't in say real estate investing think I'm crazy because I have so much mortgage debt. But that's what we were taught. But that's just the old financial paradigm. And if you follow that old financial paradigm, because it's shifted with low interest rates to you got to borrow to get ahead, that's just the wrong way to think. You want to be smart money. Don't think in the old paradigm. And this is what I've been telling a lot of young people in their early 20s, right? That you either do everything in your power, scrape up every dollar you have, side hustles, you do anything, Uber and stuff like that, and you got to own real estate, or you just got to invest in really risky assets such as crypto that will outperform inflation and the market, so you'll be able to own a home and have this American dream of a detached home and white picket fence in Toronto. And frankly, even if you do that, I still think it'll be really hard because that dream is essentially reserved for the top 1% earners who are making over $250,000. And even at $250,000, it's really hard to buy a decent home in Toronto along the subway line, right? So I did this. I'm telling you all of this is what is fact and what I see. Is this fair? No, absolutely not. Is it going to continue? 100%, at least in the next 4 to 6 months until we see more stuff available to buy. And I remember that when I was younger, in the early 2000s, dating myself here, that thinking if I made 6 figures, I was going to be rolling in it and making money, right? But psych. Totally lied to with the way the financial paradigm has shifted. 300K is the new 100K. And it's unfortunate truth. And anyone who is still living in that old kind of financial paradigm when real interest rate is below 0 is gonna suffer. You just gotta understand that cheap interest, cheap money has fueled asset prices and asset bubbles. And bubbles can go on for a very long time, right? And people have been saying Toronto real estate's been a bubble. It could be, but I don't think it's ending anytime soon, even if we call it a bubble. Right? So I hope 2021 was an eye-opening one for you, watching the inflation go absolutely crazy, go on a tear while clearly, the governments are lying to us about what real inflation is, right? I'm not going to go down that path. But at the very least, they retired the word transitory. We know it's not transitory. Prices aren't going to come back down. They're going to stay elevated regardless, right? It's just businesses are going to increase their price. They're not listening to this transitory stuff. At the very least right now, after you've watched this far, you'll understand that inflation is here to stay. It's not transitory. And in the next short term, call it 6 months, prices for real estate are still going to go up. Of course, do your own due diligence, but that's how I perceive everything around me in the world right now. Until we have real interest rates above 0, at the very least, remember, we're minus 2 to 3% right now. We're not going to see demand for hard assets, especially real estate, go down, nor are we going to see a price crash, especially when we have 0.5% sorry, 0.5 months of inventory. Crashing happening, prices still going up, money still cheap, right? I've been beating this drum for like the last 5 years plus now, and I've been told I'm wrong. I'm too bullish despite what the data says. But let's just entertain that idea and say that I was wrong, or I will be wrong in the future. At what point will I be wrong? And from now till that point, how much would prices have gone up until you thought I was wrong? If it's tomorrow, great, don't buy anything. But what if it goes on for another 4 to 6 months and prices go up another 10, 15%? Right? Like, we never know, we can't predict these things, right? So that's why if you have owned a property in the last 5 years, at minimum, it's gone up by 50%. And I've talked about what a correction looks like in this video over here, you can check it out. Remember, a 20% correction puts us back January 2021, like 375 days from when I'm shooting this right now. It's crazy. Now, there's one key thing I'm looking out for right now that will stop / stagnate / crash the market, and that's this provincial election that's coming in June. I talked about it in my 7 videos up here. And something's got to give, because the provincial election and the provincial government is what controls supply and can open up some land. So either they're going to put some action or people will pan their vote, and either way, it's going to affect the market in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I put short term, 1 to 6 months, right? But I suspect housing affordability is just going to be the biggest discussion point for everybody, and what they're going to do or pander for is going to be coming up, I think, starting in April. So hopefully you understand all of this as a thesis of what's going to happen, what happened in 21, what I'm expecting in 2022. And again, check out the prediction video if you want to see why I think 2020 is going to, like what the expectation for 2020 is going to be, right? Now, if you're looking to make a real estate move in 2020 and plan for real estate, what your strategies, whether you're buying or selling, you can book a call with me using the link right here. It's www.chatwithxander.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya. Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.